When the ER nurse passed me her phone, my sight was fading and my chest barely rose. I was dying. The surgeon had just informed my relatives I might not live through the night. But when my mother's voice came over the speaker, there was no fear, no sobbing, only a chilly, irritated sigh. "We're occupied, Rachel. Your sister needs us more at the moment. She's having a full emotional collapse over her engagement party." Then she ended the call. They never appeared, not that night, and not for the whole week I struggled for my life alone in the ICU. But 7 days later, when my mother and sister finally swept into my hospital room expecting to demand money, my bed stood empty. All that remained was one folded note on the white sheet. And the second my mother read it, the color left her face. "My name is Margaret. I'm 31 years old. And up until the night my world broke apart, I believed that unconditional love was something every daughter owned." The rain was blinding when the semi-truck crossed the median, hurling my car spinning off the embankment. The impact crushed the metal around my body like paper. By the time the paramedics extracted me from the wreckage and raced me to the emergency room, my lungs were failing, my ribs were shattered, and my blood pressure was crashing. The trauma surgeon told the head nurse to reach my family at once. He doubted I'd survive the next hour. With shaking hands, Nurse Sarah dialed my mother's number on speakerphone. I was drifting in and out of awareness, fighting for every breath, yet I heard every single word. My mother didn't gasp, she didn't weep. Instead, there came a heavy, irritated sigh. "We're busy right now, Sarah, or whoever this is. Qley is having a complete mental collapse because her engagement party caterer canceled and we're handling it. Your sister needs us more right now. Stop exaggerating every little thing Margaret does. Ma'am, your daughter is in critical condition." Nurse Sarah tried to step in, her voice trembling with anger. "We'll come when we can." My mother cut in coldly and hung up. They didn't arrive that night. They didn't arrive the next day. As I lay dying, my golden child sister's party menu remained the priority. That reaction from my mother shouldn't have shocked me, but trauma has a way of tearing away the excuses you've made for people your entire life. Growing up, the ranking in our house was absolute. My younger sister, Qley, was the golden child, fragile, beautiful, and endlessly demanding. I was the reliable one, which really just meant I stayed invisible unless something needed fixing or paying for. When I was 22, working 2 jobs while finishing my finance degree, Qley needed a luxury car for her college graduation. My mother guilted me into co-signing the loan and covering the down payment, claiming family lifts each other up, Margaret. When Qley inevitably defaulted on the payments, I was the one who cleared the debt to protect my own credit score. By the time I reached 30, I had built a successful wealth management firm through pure determination and 80-hour work weeks. But to my mother, my success was never something to celebrate. It was simply a resource to be drawn on for Qley. Over the past 3 years alone, I had quietly paid off $45,000 of Qley's credit card debt, funded her boutique's failed launch, and covered the initial $15,000 deposit for her upcoming dream wedding venue. Every time I tried to set a boundary, my mother would unleash a flood of tears, accusing me of being heartless, jealous, and cold. I had convinced myself that if I just kept giving, if I made myself indispensable enough, they would eventually love me the way they loved each other. Lying in that hospital bed, surrounded by the steady beeping of monitors keeping me alive, the scales finally dropped from my eyes. My devotion hadn't purchased their love. It had only purchased my place as their personal ATM. The next 48 hours were a hazy nightmare of bright surgical lights, agonizing breaths, and the sterile scent of antiseptic. I underwent an emergency 4-hour surgery to repair my internal bleeding and stabilize my crushed ribs. Every time I woke in the ICU, my eyes frantically searched the doorway, hoping against hope to see my mother's face or even a text on my phone. Nothing. The room stayed completely silent except for the rhythmic, mechanical hum of the life support machines. It was Nurse Sarah who remained by my side. She held my hand during the worst pain spikes, brushed the hair from my bruised forehead, and adjusted my IV lines with gentle care. A complete stranger was offering me the compassion my own bloodline refused to spare. By day 4, the fog in my mind cleared, replaced by a cold, sharp stillness. The surgeon walked in and told me it was a miracle I had survived the night, let alone the week. He said most people in my condition wouldn't have made it through the first 24 hours. Hearing those words struck something deep inside me. I had been given a second chance at life, but to truly live it, I had to stop letting my family drain me dry. As I stared up at the dim hospital ceiling in the middle of the night, a quiet resolve settled over my heart. I was finished begging for scraps of affection. It was time to carry out my own plan. By day 6, my body was healing at a rate that astonished the surgical team. I was moved out of the ICU and into a private recovery room, but physical recovery was only half the fight. I needed to safeguard my future before my mother and sister realized I hadn't died. With Nurse Sarah's help, I contacted my lawyer from my hospital bed. Over the next 24 hours, we quietly carried out a complete financial severance. First, I revoked my mother's healthcare proxy and power of attorney, transferring all legal authority to a trusted fiduciary. Next, I froze the joint emergency account I had shared with my mother, reclaiming the $80,000 balance I had personally deposited over the years. Then came the biggest strike. I called the luxury wedding venue Qley had booked for her upcoming nuptials. Since the $15,000 deposit had been made on my credit card, and the remaining $40,000 balance was scheduled to auto-draft from my business account that Friday, I canceled the reservation entirely and requested a full refund of my deposit based on breach of contract clauses. Finally, I arranged for a private transport van to transfer me to a quiet, high-end rehabilitation facility 3 hours away, completely off the grid. On the morning of day 7, as the transport team prepared my wheelchair, I sat down on the edge of the crisp white hospital bed. With a steady hand, I took a piece of hospital stationery, wrote a brief message, folded it in half, and laid it directly in the center of the empty mattress. I was walking away from my old life, and I was never looking back. On the afternoon of day 7, the heavy double doors of the recovery wing swung open as my mother and Qley strutted down the hallway. They hadn't come from a sudden wave of maternal guilt or sisterly love. They had come because 3 hours earlier, Qley had received a frantic call from her wedding coordinator informing her that the venue payment had been declined, the reservation canceled, and the $15,000 deposit pulled back. Simultaneously, my mother had tried to pay for a luxury spa package using the joint account, only to have her card rejected at the register. Furious and convinced that I had made some terrible administrative error from my hospital bed, they marched toward room 314, ready to unleash hell. Qley burst through the door first. Her designer handbag slung over her arm, her face twisted in a scowl. "Margaret, what on earth is wrong with you?" my venue manager said. She stopped dead in her tracks. The room was completely quiet. The IV poles were bare, the heart monitors were turned off, and the bed curtains were pulled wide open. There was no pale, broken sister lying under the blankets, hooked up to tubes, waiting for their forgiveness. My mother pushed past Qley, her eyes scanning the sterile space in confusion and rising anger. "Where is she? Did they move her to another room without telling us?" Nurse Sarah walked by the doorway, clipboard in hand, stopping just long enough to look at them with cold, unmistakable disgust. "She was discharged," Sarah said flatly. "She left an hour ago." My mother's face flushed red. "Discharged? Without consulting me? I am her mother." "You were," Sarah replied, pointing toward the empty bed. "She left you something." There, resting on the smooth, unwrinkled white sheet, was the single folded note. Qley snatched the note off the mattress, her long, manicured nails digging into the paper as she unfolded it. My mother leaned over her shoulder, her chest heaving with indignation, fully expecting to read an apology or a pitiful plea for attention. Instead, my handwritten words cut through the room like a blade. "Dear Mom and Qley, when I was dying, you told the nurse that Qley's engagement party caterer was more important than my life. I heard every word. You proved that to you I am not a daughter or a sister. I am just an endless line of credit. That credit limit has officially reached zero. I have revoked Mom's power of attorney. I have frozen the joint account and reclaimed my money. I have canceled Qley's wedding venue payment and taken back my deposit. Every credit card I paid for has been shut down, and my law firm is moving all of my assets into an untraceable trust. You left me to die alone in the dark. Now you get to live with the consequences of your greed in the light. Do not try to find me. You no longer have a daughter. You no longer have a sister, Margaret." The silence in room 314 was suffocating. My mother's face went from angry red to a ghostly, deathly pale. Her knees buckled, and she had to grab the edge of the empty hospital bed to keep from collapsing onto the floor. Qley let out a sharp, hysterical gasp, dropping the paper as if it had burned her skin. "My venue," Qley whispered, her voice cracking as the reality set in. "My wedding, it's all gone." "Mom, what did you do?" They didn't cry for my pain. They didn't cry because they almost lost me. They panicked because their golden gravy train had just pulled out of the station forever. 6 months have passed since that day in room 314, and sitting on the porch of my oceanfront cottage in Carmel, I finally know what it feels like to breathe freely. My recovery was long and painful, but away from the toxic cloud of my family's expectations, my mind and body healed stronger than ever. I sold my old house, moved my wealth management firm entirely remote, and cut all ties with anyone who knew my mother or sister. Through mutual acquaintances, I occasionally hear whispers of the aftermath. Without my financial cushioning, their illusion of wealth completely collapsed. Qley had to downgrade her extravagant wedding to a modest courthouse ceremony after her fiancé realized her family wasn't wealthy at all. My mother was forced to downsize her home and return to work full-time to cover the debts she had accumulated on cards I used to pay off. They tried calling me from dozens of burner phones, leaving frantic voicemails begging for forgiveness and eventually begging for money, but I never answered. I blocked every number and moved on. Surviving that car accident gave me back my life, but leaving my family gave me back my soul. I realized that blood makes you related, but loyalty, respect, and love make you family. If you were in my shoes, would you have left that note and walked away forever or given them one last chance? Comment your thoughts below. Thank you for watching my story, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.